Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by The Art of Education, and I'm your host, Tim Mogan. Now, as we are starting the new school year here, we're doing a lot of episodes about the new year and how to start the new year right. And I think that that's important because, right now is the time for inspiration. Like, you are excited to get back to school, or most of you are excited to get back to school. Kids are generally excited to be there, or at least excited to be in your class, and they're ready to get going. They're ready to be inspired, and they're ready to start working. And inspiration can come from a lot of different places. But for me, a lot of times, I like to draw inspiration from art history. And this idea kind of came about, the idea for this discussion, this podcast, because Abby posted recently on Facebook about artists that are new to you, like artists that maybe other people have discovered, maybe they're already popular, but you're just discovering, or ones that you're just learning to love. And I absolutely adore that idea because I love seeing people finding new artists, new work, and new methods of inspiration. It's fascinating to see what people come up with, who they're learning about, and most importantly, how they are using those artists in the classroom. So Abby and I are going to talk about that today. And, I hope that our discussion is able to do that for you. Maybe introduce you to a new artist or two, give you some ideas for the classroom, how to use these artists and use their ideas to help inspire your students. But before we start the discussion, I want to tell you about the Winter Art Ed Now conference. And I know it's weird to be talking about winter and something that's happening in February because it is August and we're just starting the school year. But I need to tell you about it because Thursday, the 31st, is actually the last day that you can sign up for $99. And I am excited because we've announced a few presentations already. We have Jonathan Jurovich. He's a National Teacher of the Year finalist. He was on the podcast here, and he's going to be presenting on empathy and building relationships. Don Massey, who is at just about every conference and does an amazing job, is going to be presenting with chalk pastels. We're going to have presentations on brain breaks and street art and making community connections. And there's just so much more coming. Like, I'm working behind the scenes right now on getting presenters for STEAM ideas and sculpture projects and ceramics and analyzing art with your kids. Just so many great ideas. And as always, we're trying to find some great presenters as well. So again, just till the end of this week, you can go to artednow.com and get the low price of just $99 for the conference. All right. Abby is staring at me, waiting for her turn to talk. So let's go ahead and bring her on now. Okay, Abby Shukai is joining me now. Abby, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Tim?
I am doing great. I am excited to talk about artists and inspiration. But before we dive in, I want to ask you, you've started out this school year with all kinds of different artworks that are bringing kind of the power of positivity into your classroom. The hashtag Be Kind thing that's going on all around our city of Omaha. But if I can just ask you, why do you think these ideas are so important?
Well, so you mentioned this hashtag Be Kind thing. So just a little background information for listeners. My school district has adopted this philosophy for the last few years, and it's just kind of become an initiative where I have a conversation with my students, and one of the things we always say is we just talk about being kind to one another. And so that's really influenced a lot of my thinking and ways that I introduce some things to my students. So starting off the school year, I definitely used a lot of this positive kindness in the art room because the art room is one of the best places that you can do that in. And I did write an article about one of the projects that I did that was a tie-in with street art and stencil design and just simply using spray chalk to go around and create positive messages around the school campus. And so that was something that really had a great response. And I always talk with my students about what makes you feel better when you're having a bad day. Mm-hmm. And I always challenge my students too, as they exit my classroom, is to talk to someone different or go out of your way to do something that maybe you wouldn't do just to be kind to one another. And I think in our day and age of schools, it's really hard. It's hard to be a teacher sometimes when we have students with mental health issues and we don't know how to handle those things. And by bringing positivity and this philosophy of kindness into the classroom, and through making art, hopefully it can make a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And as much as I'd like to be able to do that all the time,
right,
sometimes we need to just kind of find artists that inspire us, in other ways too, not necessarily for these huge, important ideas. And, I wish we could do that all the time. But sometimes we're just teaching art as well. So I also want to talk about artists that just kind of inspire us in other ways. And so we've each put together a little bit of a list of some of our favorite artists that either inspire us or, more importantly, inspire our kids in different ways. And so if we can just go through those and kind of share who we like and why we like them. Can I go first?
Yeah, sure, Tim.
Okay. I mean, it is my podcast after all.
Sure, I guess it's all about you. Fine.
Okay, so I wanted to just do one that my kids are always fascinated by op art and optical illusions. So artist number one for me is Bridget Riley. Like, she does just amazing stuff with, black and white artwork. She does do some color stuff too, but her black and white stuff is amazing. And just talking about optical illusions and visual perception, and if you really want to get into like the science behind all of that, she is an awesome artist for all things op art, and really introducing that to your kids. I also like Yakov Agam when it comes to op art, but Bridget Riley is definitely my go-to there. So, do you like Bridget Riley? Do you teach optical illusions?
I do. I teach a lot of optical illusions in my digital art classes, which is super fun. I do, maybe when I taught elementary school, I did it a little bit more, but it just takes a lot of time.
It does.
For students to construct things. So I've been kind of doing it more in my digital art classes, which have been pretty fun. The last one that we did was we did an optical illusion where they design it, but then we actually printed it out and set it along on tables and stuff, and it looks like a hole.
Yeah.
For real.
Nice.
So, those are kind of the ways that I like to incorporate it a little bit.
Okay, cool. Now, who's artist number one for you?
Okay, so artist number one is Kristen Farr, who is a contemporary artist who focuses a lot on, her work is inspired by Pennsylvania Dutch folk art.
Okay.
And so
that doesn't sound very exciting.
No, it doesn't. So when you're talking about, I always show my students, barn quilts.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's kind of what it comes from, but her work is inspired by that, but it's not like that.
Yeah.
But it is very geometric with design. And so it's a really great way to introduce the ruler to your students because if they don't use the ruler, their design is going to be totally off. And even with my 8th grade students, they just don't know how to measure things. And so it's a really good way to get them thinking about symmetry, design, using math concepts. I mean, there is actually a lot of geometry when I talk about Kristen Farr, but her work is so colorful. And I know that we might have, do we make color wheels in the classroom? Do we not? I'm not sure, but I do know that color mixing is really important. Mm-hmm. And she's a really great artist to incorporate color theory, color mixing. A lot of her color designs are made in such a way that they are just so brilliant. And she focuses a lot on the relationships of colors. So, it's super cool that way, and it's a kind of a more modern way. It's 2018, 2018 way of creating a color wheel, if you will. So that's a super good one if you are looking for an exciting way to teach color.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes to the whole point that I always talk. I mean, you know how much I hate perspective drawing and how much I hate color wheels. But I think the whole point that I'm trying to get at is that there are better ways to do things, and Kristen Farr is a great example of a better way to do that, because like you said, you know, it's not a traditional boring color wheel where you fill in 12 different circles. Like, you have this dynamic, exciting way to show how colors mix, how colors blend, how they relate to each other, and I think that's just a much better way to teach that. But moving on to my next artist, somebody that kind of got me thinking when you were talking about precision and repetition and things like that with Kristen's work, is Tara Donovan. I don't know if you know her or not, but
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, she creates these amazing sculptures, and basically she'll take just everyday objects, you know, styrofoam cups or drinking straws or toothpicks or scotch tape, and actually make these giant installations just using, you know, hundreds or thousands of these materials. She actually has one that used 1 million index cards.
Oh my gosh.
And so she turns them into these like really intense, really repetitive sculptures, but they almost turn into these like organic materials, like this organic subject matter. And so anytime that I'm talking to kids about repetition, particularly when we're teaching sculpture, you know, I love showing her work. And like I said, it's really interesting because it is just like these boring everyday materials, but then she absolutely transforms them into these giant room-sized sculptures that, yeah, just really kind of blow my mind. I mean, they're really intense and I really, really enjoy them. What about you? Do you have any sculptors that kind of interest you?
Yeah, I do. So kind of going along the same lines of those everyday objects, I love the work by Tom Friedman. He's you know, mostly works with sculpture, but one of the things that I really like about using him in the classroom is that he does a lot of conceptual art, which is can be really difficult for students to understand. But I think he does a good job. His work is, he does a good job of kind of allowing students to understand that a little bit. And, you know, I've talked about conceptual art with my 8th grade students before, and they're just like, what? Like, what did you just say to me? But let me give you an example. So he's using those everyday found objects. A lot of his his later work or his past work, there was one of them that's like, okay, it's a sculpture of cardboard boxes, like cereal boxes, and just like things that he would eat. And they were all just the corners of the boxes over a year's time. And so it's kind of showing, you know, this is all of the products, or this is what I have eaten or whatever over a year's time. So it's kind of a different way a lot of his work is kind of focusing on just being reflective on you as a person, you know, environmentally conscious. But a lot of the time he incorporates a lot of childlike humor into his work, which is super relatable to students, and they actually can grasp it and understand it. And, you know, one of my students' favorite sculptures is the giant hamburger made of styrofoam. Yes. But he's just a really good one that I think it's a good way to introduce conceptual art, because it doesn't go over your student's head, but it can be really fun and enjoyable and can really get students to reflect and give them a frame of reference for maybe diving deeper into some of their own work.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I love him because, you know, he's whimsical, but then, like you said, you know, he has so many deeper ideas. And so it's approachable. It's easy for kids to understand, but then it works as kind of a gateway into talking about some of those deeper subjects, some of those bigger ideas that we're kind of getting at. Now, my next artist that I wanted to talk about is Remedios Varo. And not very many people know her. She is
I don't know her.
Okay, well, you need to look her up.
I'm Googling it right now.
Okay. But she is an amazing surrealist. And, you know, I love to show her because, you know, like, you can only talk about Salvador Dali for so long. You can only show so many Rene Magritte bowler hat paintings. And, like, her stuff is really, really intense. Like, it's very, very dreamlike. But also has all of these tie-ins to nature, to the natural world, but with this like mystical, like almost eerie sort of feeling to it. And so, I don't know, I think of it as being like these atmospheric type paintings that are just very different, than the really in your face stuff of like Dali. And so
Yeah, okay, so I just did a quick Google
what's
search.
the first impression when
They're
you're looking
so so interesting. Like I can't, like you click on one and I can't look at it because there's so much stuff going on. But it kind of reminds me of like surrealism meets fairy tale meets Renaissance.
That's
like,
a good example. Yeah, no, that's
I don't know.
Really
There's
good
lots of
description.
architecture in there, windows. Yeah.
But a very like soft painterly style with most of her stuff, even if it is like this strange creature like eating breakfast at a table. Like,
Yeah, I feel like this could be the book cover for Canterbury Tales. Maybe.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Cool. All right. Who's next on your list?
So my next one is CJ Hendry, and she is an Australian contemporary artist who focuses on drawing. She uses a lot of colored pencils, and some of her past work is done with just ink on paper. But one of the reasons why I was really drawn to her work is because we've talked about this before on the podcast, but I hate teaching drawing.
Yes.
But her work, she's so very hyper realistic. And so kids see it and, they're like, that's not a photo. And you're like, no, you can learn to draw like that too. But they're all relatable objects too.
Yeah.
Like Lego men and things like that. But one of my favorite things, that I've come across. So she recently did this, exhibit that's called Monochrome. That is just, monochromatic colors. So she would had these different rooms where it was like an all yellow room, an all blue room. And in each side of those rooms, all the objects inside of that were the matching color. But then her drawings on the wall, and these drawings are massive. They're huge. She had these crumpled up, like Pantone chips, cards, and just had the drawings of the Pantones that matched the color of the room. But the drawings are incredible. And so one of the ways that I've been using her work in my classroom is she has this other series where she would look at just like paint on a palette and just like the glop of paint, excuse me. And she would have, so what I've been having students do is we've been mixing together like this pretty swatch of paint. So it's like goopy, there's texture, and then we take a photo of it. And then students then use that photo. We do a little series where they're first just looking at value, just using regular drawing pencils. And then eventually we go into colored pencils. But it's just a really small way to teach those drawing concepts of value in a more interesting way. And students are super into it because they can really see how the colors are mixing together, which makes sense when you're teaching colored pencils. And so it's kind of discovering her as an artist has kind of made me hate teaching drawing less.
Okay, good. I thought you were going to say even more.
No, less, because I feel like I'm onto something here. So, yeah.
No, I'm just looking up her stuff for the first time, like you just did with Remedios Varo. And
first reactions?
It's amazing. I love her stuff. It reminds me a lot of two of my favorite artists that I use for drawing, Kent Bellows and Robert Longo. Like, both of those guys do these hyper-realistic drawings, and she's kind of in that same vein, but she takes it a little further, and I love these huge paint swatches that she has drawn, because it really did, like, when you first look at it, and I thought it was just giant globs of paint on the wall, which is cool. But then you see her, like, it's actually an 8-foot drawing of a paint swatch, and it's really, really interesting. So I'm kind of fascinated, and I kind of want to look her up more, which hopefully I guess is the point here. We'll put links on the page for you guys so you can check out all of these artists and maybe even bring some ideas into your classroom and hate drawing a little bit less. So.
Yeah, that's the goal.
All right, cool. Thank you, Abby. Okay, we will post links to all of these artists that we talked about today and their websites or Instagrams or whatever accounts where you can discover them and see what their work is all about. I think it's a lot of fun to share the people and the artists that we love. I just introduced Abby to Remedios Varo, and she introduced me to CJ Hendry, and immediately for both of us, the wheels start turning. You start thinking about, how are kids going to respond to this? How can I use this in my lessons? How can I use this to show kids what's out there and inspire them? And I think that's a wonderful thing. So check out these artists, and if you're so inclined, maybe listen to some old episodes where Andrew and I are introducing different artists and talking about how we bring their work into the classroom. So hopefully we have gotten your wheels turning as well, and hopefully you're going to be looking up some of these artists and thinking about how to bring them into your classroom. It's the beginning of the year. It is a great time for you to be inspired, and a perfect time to inspire your kids as well. Art Ed Radio is produced by The Art of Education with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. Thank you for listening, as always. Go sign up for the winter conference. Website is artednow.com, because you have exactly 2 more days to get that $99 price. I promise you it will be worth it, so go sign up, and we will see you for the conference on February 2nd. We'll talk to you next week.